Welcome, friends, to our Wednesday meditation and talk, and blessings to those of you celebrating the new year, Rosh Hashanah, Shana Tova. Blessings. So we're being webcasted on my YouTube pages, and also this is available through IMCW. So we start with our meditation, and I invite you, as you do, to find a posture that really supports you. Find a way of sitting that allows you to be alert, upright, awake, and also at ease, relaxed. The sitting posture really is what makes the inner state possible. It makes it kind of conducive to, if you're sitting upright, being more alert and awake. And then at ease, see if you can, in the midst of that uprightness, see what can relax, what wants to let go a little. So there's that blend of awake and relaxed. Awake and relaxed. You might let the breath lengthen a bit, so you have a nice full in-breath and a slow out-breath. And again, nice full in-breath and a slow out-breath. And letting the breath be natural, just a little more collected here. Feel the attention at the heart. Breathing and feeling the heart. We take some moments to sense our intention. The invitation is to really touch into what matters to you. It's a very powerful reflection, just to ask, what is it that I really aspire to? What does my heart long for? What matters? And perhaps it's to be more present in your life or more open-hearted. Maybe it's to come to more realization as to who you really are, your true, authentic nature. Maybe it's to relax, to be more at ease, just to sense what matters to you. And we let that be a kind of opening prayer. In the stillness and the quietness, we can deepen presence as we wake up through the body, from the inside out, feeling the energy that's here. You might begin by simply feeling the eyes. Let the eyes be like orbs in water, just floating. You might sense that the outside corners are slightly lifted up. Just kind of imagine the curve of a smile spreading through the eyes. There's a real sense of softness, letting the brow be smooth. Aware of the sensations, the felt sense of aliveness in the area of the eyes. You might sense the mouth in a slight smile, and the inside of the mouth smiling. And let the tongue relax. Let it fill the lower jaw. See if you can relax down to the root of the tongue. Feeling the sensations in the tongue, the gums, teeth, the lips. So in a global way, you can feel the whole mouth alive, vibrating. You might sense the throat filling the neck. Be aware of the aliveness and energy in the area of the neck. Allowing the shoulders to fall away from the neck, relaxing back and down some. And feel the awareness that fills the shoulders. So you're feeling the shoulders from the inside out. And if you notice any tension or tightness, imagine and sense that it can float in awareness. That there's space for it to naturally loosen or untangle. It can help to imagine a dissolution, like ice melting to water. Then imagine water evaporating into vapor. Feeling from the inside out the shoulders, the aliveness that's there. Be aware of the length and the volume of your arms. Sensing the arms running into the wrists, into the hands. You might feel your fingers from the inside out and sense how they're filled with energy and aliveness. Notice what happens if you soften the hands. And again, feel from the inside out. Vibrating, tingling. A very intimate attention to feel the life that's there. You might sense an openness in the chest. And imagine that smile, the curve of a smile spreading through the chest, spreading through the heart area. And this is to help discover the space that has room for whatever is here. Open, receptive, gentle. Feeling from the inside out the region of the heart. And discover with that intimate attention the quality of energy, the movement of energy that's there. The hands still soft, slight smile at the mouth, the eyes soft. Continuing to scan down the body. You might loosen the abdominal region. Let this next breath be received in a softening belly. This breath. And then again, receiving the breath in a softening belly. And again, letting the awareness fill the belly. You can even imagine the curve of a smile through the area of the navel. Sense an ease and an openness there. And feel from the inside out, with that intimate attention, the energy that's there, the aliveness. Continuing to scan down and letting the awareness now fill the whole pelvic region. And feeling from the inside out, quality of energy, this dance of sensation. A relaxed, receptive presence. Let yourself be aware of the length and the volume of your legs. So awareness is filling the legs, running down into the ankles, the feet. So you can feel your feet from the inside out, aware of the vibration, the tingling, the aliveness that's there. You might imagine and visualize this vast planet and atmosphere that's below you and around you, just filled with aliveness, and imagine it flowing and pouring into your body, that life, through the feet, filling the legs and the torso, arms, head, just letting life live through you, sensing this body as a field of sensation. Aware of the dance of sensation and also the play of sound. Just another frequency of aliveness, coming and going. Sound of these words, spaces that are between sounds, close-in sounds, the more distant sounds that you can perceive. So you're listening not just with your ears, but with your whole awareness. With your whole awareness, listening to and feeling this very moment. completely here, now. At some point you'll notice that the attention has drifted into thoughts. That's natural. Our practice is to notice when we can. You might even mentally make a note, okay, thinking. Then relax, open again, back into the senses. Come back home into the aliveness that's right here. You might notice again the sounds that are coming and going. You might bring the awareness again very consciously into the body, feeling the awareness inside the shoulders, and maybe letting go again. Softening the hands, feeling the life there. Loosening the belly, softening and feeling the aliveness there. Relaxing your heart. So again, there's a sense of resting, being the awareness that's right here, that's listening to and feeling the moment. You might check and see if it's possible to let go just a little more right now. Letting go of any thoughts that are sticky or clinging, possessing the mind. Let go of tension in the body. Letting go again into that awareness, that space and awakeness that's right here. That presence that's listening to, receiving, this moment-to-moment flow of experience. As a way of closing, you might sense how the awareness that's here, this presence, is experiencing this human heart, how awareness is receiving the heart right now, sensing the aliveness or the vulnerability, the tensions or the flow that's there. Sense that you're listening to your life, the life of the heart. And taking a moment to offer whatever prayer of metta, of loving kindness you'd like to your own human heart. And sensing the heart space that's here that's quite inclusive of this human heart and all human hearts and all beings everywhere. So you close by offering your prayer, and we'll offer our prayer together, just holding this whole world in our hearts. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings touch great and natural peace. May all beings be happy. May all beings everywhere awaken and be free. Namaste. You might take a few full breaths. If the eyes are closed, opening the eyes. If it helps to stand, to move around some, please do. And as you do, as you make the transition, I'll offer a few announcements for this week. Please come to my website, tarabrach.com, for virtual offerings. And I'd like to bring your attention to an offering this fall, December 7th, Sunday, December 7th. I am doing, with Jonathan, my husband, we're doing a day long, and it's both in person and also you can do it online. It's called Choosing Love in Perilous Times. And as many know, it's rare that I do live events, so I really hope you can make it. It'll be held at Catholic University in Washington, D.C., and there are reduced rate options available, so you can get the full details and registration on my homepage. But I'd like to say it's so easy to feel isolated and caught in the reactivity of these times, fear, the anger, and more. So this is a wonderful chance to be in community together, waking up our hearts together. I invite you to check out imcw.org for live stream offerings available by local teachers, and the shared experience sanghas this coming week are seniors, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, Asian and Pacific Islanders, and teens. Each week in the evening, 8:30 East Coast time, we have mindful dialogue, and it's a chance to get together with community, those that have perhaps been following these talks, and explore whatever's coming up. how to bring these teachings alive in your life. So the call-in information is tarabrach.com/class. And I also each week mention Dana, which is the Pali word for generosity. Our talks, our meditations are offered freely and in the spirit of Dana. So your donations make a great difference. And I want to thank you in advance for whatever you can offer. And you can find the links in the description. Okay, friends, now for this week's talk. Namaste. Welcome, friends. Thank you for being here. I was talking to a friend recently about the state of the world, and afterwards he sent me this cartoon. And in it, you've got a man in a doctor's office, and the doctor's saying, "Here's your problem. It looks like you're paying attention to what's going on." For some reason, it made me think of George Carlin. You might remember this. He writes that, one of every three Americans is suffering from some form of mental illness. And he says, think of your two best friends. If they're okay, then it must be you. And it made me think, it's way more than one out of three. And for those who are paying attention to the news, who are impacted by the news, this isn't mental illness. The fear, the distress, the anger, the heartbreak, these are all intelligent responses to our unraveling world. I mean, we are living in times that are increasingly dangerous. It's a shadowy era. So it's natural for each of us to wonder, how can we hold this? How can we respond? And in a way, pretty much every reflection and talk I'm doing is about that. Today is part two of a talk called Trusting Basic Goodness in a Fractured World. Part one, please, if you want to listen to it, it's available on the podcast. And part of it, I offered an evolutionary perspective on the current state of the world that many are familiar with, that when we're experiencing strong fear and separation, our survival brain can take over, and we get stuck in self-protection. We get stuck in anger and hatred and bad othering and aggression, in that sense of us, them. And when that happens, when there's that limbic hijack, we have lost contact with our full capacities for reason, for executive function, for mindfulness, for compassion, for empathy. And this happens individually and collectively. And this is what really is characterizing this dark age our world is descending into, a kind of trance or limbic hijack. And you wouldn't be here if you didn't intuit that this is not the end of the evolutionary story. If you hadn't experienced personally waking up from that trance, we humans can do that. We have built in the mindfulness and the capacity for compassion, and we can strengthen our ability to see what's going on, to calm ourselves down, and to expand in a way that holds others in our heart. We can touch into what I call basic goodness, or that sense of the awareness and love that really pervades life. So, having said that, I want to name that focusing today on trusting goodness. Well, it can be a really hard sell in this current climate. Um, so what we'll do is we're going to take some moments to really look at the forces right now that are keeping us so entranced, so caught in the bad othering. And then we'll look at the inner trainings that can really evolve us right in these days that we're in right now. So, for many, the intensity of feeling us, them, the bad othering, it's increasing, you know, at an amazing pace, right, in a daily way. Like yesterday, I got a text from my beloved college roommate, and she said, "Okay, Tara, how are you keeping yourself calm, centered, and grounded and not hating in these times?" I was on Zoom with another friend who said, I know I should rise above this, meaning bad othering, but things are so horrible. I do feel anger and blame. It's hard not to blame, and it is. I'm imagining many of you are feeling just how much this atmosphere is conducive and seeing it on all sides, the demonizing, the scapegoating, and it's getting worse. I mean, here in the United States, the recent assassination of Charlie Kirk, and unto itself a tragedy. And it's become rocket fuel for hatred, for more violence. I mean, the words that are getting tossed around, we're at this terrible threshold, it's an inflection point, and it well may be leading to a dramatic increase in political violence and hatred. So, in the United States, and this is true in all authoritarian states, leaders look for any way to ramp up fear and to frame the opposition as evil. And it gives a rationale to destroy all those that are opposed. Um, it's not just leadership, it's also the reason it's so intense right now. Social media, the algorithms are designed to keep escalating anger and mistrust, and because that's what maximizes engagement. And so we are literally, by engaging in social media, taking a drug intended to keep us at war with each other. So it feels really important to reflect together on this and to honestly sense how we are part of this field of bad othering. In the United States, and I found this so interesting. Surveys show that 11% of people believe political murder is acceptable, 11%. Yet the data also shows that Americans estimate that nearly a third of their political opponents support political murder. That's 3 times as many as are true. So you see what's happening. I mean, each side has a distorted belief in the badness and the immorality of the other side that then makes them feel that the other side's more dangerous than they are. But that perception rank just revs up the actual level of danger. The extreme expression of the trance of bad othering we might consider as conspiracy. Most, I suspect, are familiar with the existence of QAnon, which isn't on the front pages right now so much, but it continues in a quite a strong way. And the main belief is that a secret cabal of elites, often framed as the Satan worshiping pedophiles, that they control the world. And and they're made up of really the Democratic Party and liberal elites. That's their human base. And a heroic insider, for many it's Donald Trump, is working behind the scenes to expose and defeat them and leading the chosen ones to a coming great awakening. So I'm only saying this because what's interesting is that a national survey in 2024 uh, said that approximately 20% of Americans believe this. 20%. And it's not just in this country. In the UK, 25%. In Europe, around Europe more generally, 32% have some version of this conspiracy theory. So I want to slow down and say, what's that like to take in that 1 in 5 people here in the United States will say, um, this is what they believe. Um, and what's important here is that conspiracy theories can only thrive. They become really sticky when people feel deeply threatened, alienated, devalued, frightened. It takes suffering, you know, and then people need something to blame for that suffering. So this was the environment in parts of Europe between the world wars. The fascism leading up to World War II thrived on conspiracy thinking. In Germany, targeting Jews as the secret corrupting force behind national decline. So conspiracy theory, it all has to do with an evil other, has existed through history. In 14th century, during the Black Death, when it swept Europe, it was witches and Jews to blame. And if we go back further, in early Rome, when disaster struck, rumors spread that Christians were secretly conspiring to undermine the empire, and they were accused of these secret rituals that include cannibalism and incest and plotting the empire's destruction. So I'm sharing all this because if we look closely, this is through history, and it's just a part of the way the human psyche works, that we need to target and find what can we blame. I mean, there's an old joke that a conspiracy theorist dies and goes to heaven, and when he arrives, God says, "Welcome, you can ask me one question, anything you want." So the man says, "I need to know, who really shot JFK?" And God says, "Lee Harvey Oswald shot him, and he acted alone." And the man pauses and he says, "Wow, this goes even higher than I thought." So, so of course, some conspiracies are real. But the point is this, that when there's a pervasive sense of evil others, this toxic distrust becomes the grounds for violating others. And it's important to name that sometimes the dehumanized other might not be seen as bad, just as not mattering. Indifference in the suffering of the most vulnerable uh, is what's going on. It's like there's this sense of dissociation. We're dehumanizing because we're just sensing they're just not important, and thus allowing the violation to go on. Um, Elie Wiesel says the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference, because we've made others unreal. Hannah Arendt says evil thrives on apathy and cannot survive without it. So as we scan and look at ourselves honestly, and we look at others honestly, it's painful, but important to see how when we're in this reactive limbic trance, others can become bad or others cannot matter. But either way, the trance is what enables this growing tide of violence. And we're witnessing it. And it's natural that as we witness it, many are feeling there's nothing we can do. I mean, these are forces we've seen through history. They're hugely powerful and it's out of control. And it may be true that this tide of hatred and distrust and violence won't be turned anytime soon. I mean, we may be headed towards a civil war. I mean, I'm speaking with you today, right here in these times, feeling it with you. It's true. We don't know if, when, how things can be turned around, but we do have a choice on how we can respond, what we can do. And we can go against the tide. We don't have to stay in that trance. We can deepen our dedication to waking up, to living from our full capacity, for presence and love. And just to remind you that when we talk about love, we're not talking about a naive love or a passivity. Living from love in its full dimensionality, you'll remember that strong back, that love means that we have the courage, because we care so much about life, to speak truth and to fight against injustice and to resist oppression. That's what it means. We love life, so we do that. And love also has that soft front that's profoundly forgiving heart that can see the vulnerability in all beings, this tender heart that sees the good in all beings. As Father Gregory Boyle put it, no exceptions. We all belong. So this that I'm talking about is the path of awakening beings, the Bodhisattva path, and it's not an abstract ideal. Think of the civil rights movement, which I do often because it gives a model and an inspiration. Think of people marching peacefully, arms linked, facing dogs and fire hoses and billy clubs and hatred, and facing that with dignity, with courage, with this unwavering spirit and love. That strong back and soft front. It was carried by a vision, a trust in what's possible. And that's what we need. We don't need to have any certainty about what's going to happen, just to trust this is possible. I mean, think of Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison, and then he didn't seek retribution. He championed truth and reconciliation, rather than us versus them. He spoke about Ubuntu, this deep African teaching that says, I am because we are. I am because we are. This intrinsic belonging. I mean, Mandela showed us that even after lifetimes of injustice, a nation could imagine and move towards wider circles of belonging. So let's look at how we can bring this directly into our lives. And as I said, it begins with interest and care, looking to see how we are in trance ourselves. For some, it helps to envision the golden Buddha. We know that this beautiful statue of a golden Buddha was in coverings for centuries to protect it through difficult times. And in similar ways, we move through this world with coverings, with our defenses, with our aggression, with our bad othering, or with our dissociation and indifference. These are coverings. And so it's honest and wise to acknowledge we get caught in the coverings, in the bad othering, in the indifference, and we forget. I mean, we forget the gold, we forget the awareness, the heart, the shared belonging. So what we do is we start observing it, and we notice that when the coverings get activated, it happens when others in some way feel different or dangerous, and not just when they're threatening our physical self. I mean, it's our egoic self a lot of the time that gets threatened, our sense of rightness. And sometimes it doesn't take that much. Um, I sometimes think about that story of a little girl talking to her teacher about whales. And at one point, the teacher remarked that it was physically impossible for a whale to swallow an entire human being because even though it's a large mammal, it has a very small throat. And the little girl insisted that, yeah, but the whale swallowed Jonah. And the teacher got irritated and reiterated that a whale can't swallow a human. It's physically impossible. So the little girl said, well, when I get to heaven, I'll ask Jonah. And the teacher said, well, what if Jonah went to hell? And the little girl replied, then you ask him. So when we're in it, when we're in bad othering, it is a trance. And if we look closely, we'll find out that in those moments, there's certain beliefs and thoughts that are going through, very narrow, um, us-them kind of thoughts. Our biochemistry shifts, our body gets tight. We're identified with the coverings. So our starting place is to slow down when we're caught and actually get familiar with that small reactive self, the thoughts, the feelings in our heart and our body. And then to try to sense as we pause, okay, so what would it mean to wake up right now? What would it mean to widen my circle of belonging, to include others? On the Bodhisattva path, there are two core practices that support us in waking up from the trance of bad othering. And the first is to see past another's coverings to the human vulnerability that's underneath. I mean, what is the fear or the hurt that is behind having the coverings be activated? This is the grounds of compassion. And then the other practice is to learn to see the basic goodness, the light of awareness, light of spirit, sometimes called the gold, that's intrinsic to all beings. When we can see vulnerability, the heart naturally softens. There's a shift in our biochemistry. Those divisive thoughts start quieting, and we actually have the perceptiveness and the spaciousness to see goodness. So they go together. So just to dive in a little more to seeing vulnerability when we've been caught in bad othering, I often talk about Ruby Sales. She's a civil rights icon and very wise woman. She described how her entire approach to social activism shifted when she learned to ask, and this is often inwardly asked, where does it hurt? She'd be seeing somebody or seeing a group of, for her, many times it was white supremacists. And if she could slow down and look more deeply and say, where does it hurt? She was able to then respond to the situation from a much more spacious and wise heart. Oprah, has helped a lot of people by guiding them when they see someone who's suffering, just ask the question, what happened to you? What happened to you? And we know it. We know it that those who were bullied, they're going to be inclined to bullying themselves, individually and collectively, when there's been violation, when there's been poverty, when there's been violence, when there's been shaming, when there's been domination, when people grow up feeling unsafe, when their needs aren't met for being seen, for being loved, it can lead to violating others. John Paul Lederach has been a real inspiration for me in his teachings about peacemaking. And he says that the only path to peace is to forge relations with those of difference. And he calls this moral imagination, which is the capacity to imagine being in relationship with the enemy or with those who disagree. And so these bodhisattva practices are ways that we do that, the way that we can start imagining being in relationship with those who are different. Because when we see perpetrators, when we see enemies, when we see those who we feel are threatening, who feel like other, who feel unreal, um, what would happen if we really asked, where does it hurt? So it becomes life-changing when we begin to imagine relating with others of difference, seeing their vulnerability, seeing their goodness. It enlarges us in profound ways. And here's the thing, here's why we're talking about this today, why it matters so much. Democracy depends on our ability to talk to each other across difference. Authoritarianism takes hold when we stay trapped in the trance of bad othering or when we stay numbed by indifference. What our world most needs right now is just this, waking up from the reactivity, more and more of us who can bridge some divides, who can widen the circle of belonging, who can learn to stay in relationship across distance. I mean, Desmond Tutu puts it this way. He says, if you want peace, you don't talk to your friends, you talk to your enemies. So I'll share two stories that illustrate this movement from bad othering to widening, to a widened sense of belonging. The first is Suleiman Khatib. I was recently on a Zoom call with him. He's a Palestinian man and I consider a new friend. His story, he grew up near Jerusalem and as a child witnessed a huge amount of violence. By age 13, he was involved with the PLO Fatah and he injured two Israeli soldiers. He was arrested, spent 15 years in Israeli jails, described the brutality and the routinely stripped naked, beaten, tear gas sprayed into prison cells. Was switched to another prison at one point. But in prison, he taught himself Hebrew and English. And during that time, he read extensively from Martin Luther King and from Gandhi. So he's and he just started educating himself about the enemy by reading really the history of the Jewish people. And he watched Schindler's List, and he said that was life-changing because through all of that kind of educating himself, what he saw was trauma behind the narrative of both sides. And when he was released, he dedicated himself to peace and reconciliation work, really calling for nonviolent resistance. One thing after he was 7 years after he was out of prison, he had been forming and part of a number of groups partnering between Israelis and Palestinians. And in 2004, a group of them, 8 former fighters from both sides, went to Antarctica. And the objective was to find common ground. And it was very, them against the elements, and they forged very deep bonds with each other. He became co-founder of Combatants for Peace, which is this partnership of Israelis and Palestinians that are dedicated to nonviolence and to ending Israeli military occupation. He talks about it's not so easy to partner. There's a real imbalance of power. His family is still living under military rule, and he's working with Israeli ex-combatants, a military that killed family, friends, and he has to keep seeing the human behind the uniform. And his heart is utterly dedicated to forgiving and holding that vision for the future. I attended a Memorial Day ceremony online that was held by Combatants for Peace. It was their 20th. This was last April. They do it each year. And you hear Israelis and Palestinians talking about losing a son or a daughter or a brother or childhood friend, and they're grieving together. And I couldn't watch it without just grieving with them and also feeling this gratitude. Um, we can't wake up out of bad othering unless we connect with the deep vulnerability that lives inside all of us. I mean, that's what Suleiman's encouraging. For his work, he was nominated for Nobel Peace Prize both in 2017 and 2018. And this is the Bodhisattva path, seeing our shared vulnerability, our potential for love, calling it forward. The second story is another co-founder of Combatants for Peace, and this is an Israeli, Chen Alon, and I may be pronouncing names wrong, and I'm sorry for that. So he served as an officer in the Israeli army, manning checkpoints in the West Bank. And he describes one day a taxi pulled up and it was packed with Palestinian children. They were sick and feverish and on their way to a hospital. And the driver pleaded, he was desperate to get them through. But the permits weren't in proper order. And so Chen refused them, didn't give them passage. The children would not go to the hospital. And then his phone rang, and it was his wife with a message about one of his children. And in that moment, something cracked open. He was no longer an officer enforcing rules. He was a father. And in front of him were other people's children who were suffering, clearly suffering. And he said that changed him. It shattered the mental wall that kept them as other. It planted the seed that would lead him to co-found Combatants for Peace. And again, this is the Bodhisattva path, to wake up past the indifference, past the othering, the bad othering, and see the vulnerability and sense our potential to wake up together. So I'm sharing these stories because the key teaching is, if we want to widen our circles of compassion, we have to pay attention to those we don't pay close attention to. We have to be in relationship. And it's important to note here that if we're living with raw trauma, it's not wise or even possible often to engage with those who we identify as the cause. It's premature. The work, if we're in the heat of trauma, is to find safe spaces to calm our nervous system, spaces of healing with trusted others, where we do that inner work of presence and self-compassion, where we can gain resilience and strength. And here's something to keep remembering, that even if we don't have trauma, I mentioned my friend on the Zoom early on, who was saying how hard it was to stop bad othering. Trying to wake up from the trance is really, really difficult, because the anger and the blame are strong, strong energies, and they're supposed to be. You know, one of my friends, Ruth King, says, anger is initiatory. It's just not transformational. We need anger. We need to feel the energy, the intelligence that knows there's something out there that is dangerous. We need to respond. The problem is that if we respond from anger and blame, we don't end up planting the seeds of healing. Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is the ancient and eternal law. So when the anger and blame are there, what do? We take that U-turn and honor and offer presence to them. There's many of you are familiar with that line, because I often quote it, that vengeance is a lazy form of grief. When we're caught in the vengeance, and when we're caught in the blaming, there's something else going on. And if we offer the anger presence and we keep paying attention, we can find underneath it, there's a fear that we may have been avoiding, a powerlessness. And if we keep staying, and this takes courage and commitment, we will get down to the vulnerability in our own being underneath that vengeance, that bad othering. We'll get down to the grief, and in the deepest way, something we care about. Because when we're angry, when we're bad othering, when it's charged, there's something we really care about. It takes a real conscious intent, a purposefulness to wake up from this trance. For me, it's a daily practice, and I've shared that before. I feel very humble about it. Every day, I read the news. Well, I don't read the news on Sundays. I take a day off because it feels important for my nervous system. But I read the news, and yesterday I was reading about some of these terrifying raids, ICE in Chicago tasing a man in the face. I read these things and, oh my gosh, my heart just clutches. Or the Israeli military that as I'm speaking, attacking Gaza City, it's a wasteland. This huge anger comes up. So I try to take time to sense what's under. And I have to open to the layers. And there's fear and there's powerlessness. I'll look at the pictures, the images uh, that are in front of me. Sometimes I look at them so I can find under the anger the grief. Because here's the thing, I want to get down to that tenderness. My grieving heart does not seek vengeance. It seeks an end to this suffering. My grieving heart doesn't bat other. My grieving heart knows that humans are not the enemy. It's the universal forces of delusion, of fear, of aggression that take over. If I can grieve, I can then start imagining myself in relationship with widening circles of belonging. And I can act, and it's from care. So I want to pause here and give you a chance to explore these bodhisattva practices of imagining ourselves in relationship with someone we might consider bad other, someone of difference, someone who feels like the enemy. I want to invite you as we do this not to choose somebody or group that brings up trauma, not to choose the most noxious leader you can find. So let this be a pause and uh, invite yourself into presence. You might close your eyes or lower your gaze if you're in a situation to do that. Take a few full breaths. And then scanning our world, choose a group that in some way feels threatening politically, because of religion, culture, a group that you might find yourself feeling a sense of us, them with. And then try to imagine and bring forward in your awareness an individual from this group. And it may be that you have someone in mind personally, or it may be that you're imagining an individual from this group. Begin by first tending honestly to your own reaction. Like what is charging the trance of bad othering for you? What is it that you're experiencing or perceiving? And allow the whatever's there to be there, the anger, the blame, the fear. And just notice when you're in this, when you're feeling that reaction of bad othering, how your mind is, how your body is, how your heart feels. So you're being a witness, you're noticing. There's real power to pausing and witnessing what's going on inside us. You might deepen the witnessing and the presence by putting a hand on your heart and feeling your breath. And just sense what's the hardest part of this. You might sense what you're believing and most fearing. You might sense what makes this matter so much. What are you most afraid of? What are you most caring about? And keep offering a very gentle and steady presence to your own vulnerability, to what's in there. Take your time. Under the anger, under the bad othering, there's something we care about. You might sense the world you're longing for and the sorrow at what is unfolding. Let the hand on the heart be a sense of witnessing with much care what's here. And feel the wisdom of your heart. Humans are not the enemy. The suffering is from conditioning, from fear, from wounds. So that as you now bring that imagining to the other, moral imagination, looking deeply, what shaped them? Just imagine. Imagine their family or caregivers or social situation, how their society affected them. Imagine them as a young child. Were their needs met for safety, for understanding, for love, for feeling valued? Just try to imagine into what suffering are they living with? Where does it hurt? If you were living inside that skin with those ideas and behaviors, what would it be like to be them? And continue to imagine. Try to imagine what they long for, what matters to them. Family, safety, security. What is it? What do they love? What are they like when they're truly peaceful, when they're happy? Imagine that you're teaming up with them to help in some way, to help an elder in difficulty, let's say. Imagine you are with them and at the same time being awed by natural beauty. Imagine you're learning something from them. Imagine seeing them expressing love to a child. Imagine grieving a loss together. Being in relationship with the other. You might sense how even this, what you're doing now, even the smallest act of imaginative seeing becomes an act of resistance to the forces that divide us. Consider that. You are going against the tide as you imagine being in relationship. And if that imagining can lead us to engage, to talk more to those of difference, to work together, If that imagining can lead to engaging and acting from an undivided heart, it becomes what Martin Luther King called soul force. We are reweaving belonging. Please take a few full breaths and just honor your own process. It's a beautiful, powerful way to stretch our consciousness, to wake ourselves up. It's powerful, friends, to use moral imagination. These bodhisattva trainings of seeing vulnerability and goodness, trainings that undo the armoring of the heart. So I invite you to keep exploring. I often think of a quote someone sent me that was at the Rwanda Memorial Center. And the quote said, "If you knew me and you really knew yourself, you would not have killed me." We know deep down that this is true, that if we know each other, if we're in touch inwardly, we'll cherish the life that's here. If we pay deep attention, we have that capacity to see essence and spirit. But it's important to name that in our society, we don't have much training or practice in doing that. You know, the namaste, I see the light in you, the light in me sees the light in you. That's not so much a part of our society, and of course, way less so now. So these last few minutes, we'll explore this deep bodhisattva training of metta or loving kindness, which is grounded in seeing the light in each other, bringing others to mind, those who are easy to love, those who are more difficult, reflecting on goodness. Many of you are familiar with Martin Buber, who taught this I thou, to see thou and sense the soul connection, soul to soul in that word. It works for some people in a very powerful way. And one student, a young Latino man, who was attending medical school in New York, he had long stretches on the subway to get to classes. So he made this his bodhisattva practice, where he would um, look at people on the subway, and the more diverse or different from himself, the better. And he would just reflect on thou, sensing the light, So it was people old and young and different skin colors and socioeconomic and so on. And he'd kind of sit across the aisle and not have eye contact, but try to sense an openness in his chest and energetically feel that soul to soul. Um, One of his major challenges to himself was when somebody had a kind of expression or look that really made him feel a sense of dislike. And one of those people was this older white woman who always dressed in a business suit, and she had this very stern, superior look. And he saw her regularly, and he would just thou. Well, one day he got off the subway and he was walking and he felt a tap on his shoulder, and it was her. And she said, "Sorry for bothering you. This is strange to say, but I'm always grateful when you're on the subway. It feels like I have a friend, somebody keeping company." And he was stunned because, of course, he had so misread it, but he was also exhilarated. And you might know there's studies on this, that we get this surprising positive boost when we have a smile or a warm contact with a stranger. The world becomes a warmer place, more trustworthy. Um, we need to enlarge our sense of belonging. Brian Stevenson talks about the word proximity. We need more proximity, getting closer to each other, to those of difference, so we can see the vulnerability, so we can remember the light. So we started today really with the darkness in the world, that we don't know what'll happen, but we can go against the tide. We can, each of us and together, we can dedicate ourselves to serving healing by remembering all of us humans, that same shared vulnerability, and all beings everywhere, that intrinsic light, that goodness. So we'll close with a meditation, very brief meditation, if you will, just to again pause, feel your breath, sense if there's anywhere in your body that wants to let go a little bit. You might assume the half smile, the slight smile at the mouth. Feel the inside of the mouth smiling. And let that smile spread through the heart. So you can feel the breath at the heart, smile at the heart, not to cover over, but to really sense the space that's here. Bringing to mind someone who's easy to love, someone who's dear to you. And just take a moment to look at them and in some way say thou or namaste, to see the light in their eyes, to see the love that shines through them, to feel what you love about them. And just thou, namaste, feel that soul to soul. You might sense your own being, the light, the warmth, the awareness that's right here. In some way, bow to that. It's right here, inside, through, and everywhere, this light of awareness. You might bring to mind someone you know who's very different from you. Again, see the light of awareness shining through their eyes. Imagine and sense what they love, who they are when they're happy, peaceful. Imagine it. Thou. Just let the word thou or namaste. I see the light. Seeing past the coverings. Bringing to mind someone you've considered a bad other. And taking a few breaths if you feel the reactivity inside you, putting your hand on your heart and breathing with it. Again, looking to see past the coverings. If the word thou works, thou, namaste. See the awareness that lives through them, what they most deeply would long for. What they're like when they're feeling loving and loved. And then widening and widening so that you can sense all the different life forms. That you hold the earth, our mother, in your heart, and all beings in your heart. Just bowing to the light, to the love that lives through all. I'll close with Thomas Merton. Then it was as if I suddenly saw the secret beauty of their hearts, the depth of their hearts where neither sin nor knowledge could reach, the core of reality, that person each one is in the eyes of the divine. If only they could see themselves as they really are. If only we could see each other that way all the time, there would be no more need for war, for hatred, for greed, for cruelty. I suppose the big problem would be that we would fall down and worship each other. Thank you, friends. Thank you for being here, for your presence, for your good hearts. We're together in our prayers for our world. Blessings.